Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, we are going to talk about people deciding to sell their homes again.
Right.
This shadow inventory of all the, this is interesting, Juana.
Yes.
People have always talked about these shadow inventories that don't exist. The foreclosures, the banks have been sitting on them and waiting to release them all, right? It's like Bigfoot, right? Bigfoot is the shadow inventory or the new home shadow. Like, none of this is real. But what they never talk about is the actual houses that people own, like that all of us own. And when people have decided to sell homes, right?
So you're saying that all of us are Bigfoot?
We're Bigfoot, basically.
Okay, got it.
Some of us are Loch Ness Monster or Yeti, abominable snowman. What else is out there? Do we miss any?
Aliens.
Aliens. Okay, got it. Aliens. Okay, so this is the article. Zillow Survey reveals growing number of homeowners eager to sell, easing rate lock concerns. People are so tired of making so much money from owning a house. They just want to get rid of it. They're like, it's too much money. What am I going to do with all this money? I'm just going to sell the house. And I have this 1.9% interest rate. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through a bunch of cool slides. I guarantee you there's stuff in here you didn't know, that they didn't know.
Right. Okay, so he's got charts, people, so hang tight. Charts are coming.
Okay, before we show the first chart, nationally, let's say 20 years ago, on average, how long did people stay in their house?
So, I've heard different numbers somewhere between 7 and 12 years.
7 and 12 years, okay. And we know that number's been increasing.
Yes.
That it was probably closer to 7 years in like 20 years ago.
Right.
Okay, because what would happen is, remember, interest rates were dropping. So if you had a 9% interest rate, after 7 years, it was time to upgrade. And then you would have no problem extinguishing that loan, selling the house, because now you were getting an 8% loan, right? So you were improving, and you would just move the equity over. Right,
so what would happen is basically you'd have the same payment for a bigger house.
Yeah, basically. So people played that game for a lot of years. Well, what's happened is we got into this thing where homes got super cheap historically. And people just said, you know what, now that I've got a low interest rate and a cheap home that I own free and clear. Because remember, 20 years ago, only about 17% of all people own their homes free and clear. It's over 42% now.
Right.
Was the last number we had, 42%. And that number's just going to keep growing. So what happened was Zillow did this poll and to see how many people were actually considered selling. Now, here's the chart. We'll just start with the chart. It says about 1 in 5 homeowners are considering selling within the next years. Doesn't mean they all will. That means that 4 in 5 are not considering it.
Correct.
Right? Okay. What's interesting about this chart is if you look at it, it starts at 2021 and it goes to now, and it's basically really has bounced around between 14 and 19% for the most part. It jumped up to... So, the question I have with this chart is the way it's bounced around. To me, this looks like noise, not signal. Because it's too much up and down, up and down, up and down. And we've certainly over the last 3 years had substantial changes in macroeconomics. Not just the policy, but the effects on the markets.
Right.
So let's go with the 21% number. So that's basically 1 in 5. They're thinking about it. We might sell within 3 years. So it's really 1 in 15 selling per year, maybe.
Right.
That's really only about 7% of all people.
Well,
so,
of homeowners.
Of homeowners. The problem is that we had 37 million people last year, the year before, said they were that their plan was to buy a house next year. We only actually sold 4 million. So, I mean, you would need like all of these people literally to sell their house. This doesn't solve the housing problem, though. Why is that? Let's say that, 10 million people come out of the woodworks and decide to sell their home, which is what this is implying if all these people actually did. We had 10 million sales next year.
That would be, first of all, that would be a record. We'll start there.
Okay, but why doesn't it solve the housing problem? If we're behind 8 million houses and we have 10 million houses come on the market, doesn't that solve the housing problem?
Well, no, because whatever houses come on the market, those people are going to have to go into other homes. So that's going to be a swap across the board. So it doesn't create new inventory. It just trades inventory in between other people. So
Yep.
if you're trading inventory across the board, that's great. But these people out here that are not homeowners, they're still on the outs.
One of the reasons why we had a housing crash and prices went down, because remember, what one is saying is technically correct. It doesn't matter how many houses we sell a year. Everyone has to have, basically, let's say you sell the house you live in, but you stay there as a tenant.
Right.
It doesn't create a new house for somebody.
Correct.
It just changes who owns it, right?
Yes.
What happened with the great financial crisis, Juana, if you either had to short sale your house or you got foreclosed, what were the chances the next year, 2, 3, 4 years you were out there buying another house?
They were pretty small. Unless you were out there buying cash, it wasn't going to happen because you couldn't get a loan for 5 to 7 years.
Right. So basically, you had a smaller buyer pool of buyers. You had a larger number of homes on the market, and you had opportunists who were out there, like somebody we know who bought 40 rentals in 2009, 10, because they were cheap.
Right.
Super cheap. Okay, here's the first quote for the article. A recent Zillow survey found that 21% of homeowners are contemplating selling their homes within the next 3 years, a rise from 15% a year earlier. I laugh when I see words like contemplating, because this to me reminds me when people say the banks are preparing to foreclose. Like, how did they know they were contemplating? What do you think that made that think that?
Is that what people do when they're sitting in the bathroom with their phones?
They're contemplating. They're contemplating. They're taking Zillow polls, going, sure, I'll sell the house, whatever. Okay, Zillow probably is just trying to get back into flipping, but they're trying to figure out how to do it and make money.
Right.
Okay, here's the next quote from the article. As for inventory, there's a steady progress and recovery from pandemic-induced lows. Annual inventory gains were recorded for the first time since April, although levels are still 36% below pre-pandemic averages. The flow of new listings shows slight improvement, pointing to cautiously optimistic outlook for 2024. Juana, we still have the interest rate problem. Here's the problem. If you refied your house and you got 2 or 3 or 4%, even if rates go back to 2, 3, or 4, you're still not super interested in selling, because if it's a good deal to have a house at 3%, isn't it a better deal to have 2 houses at 3%?
Yes, it is a better deal.
Okay, so my take is, I think these people are saying, well, yeah, when interest rates, I'm thinking about selling if interest rates drop. But I don't think a lot of these people, I think when it boils down to, a lot of them won't sell.
No, I really don't think most people are going to sell. I think the number of 21%, I think it's on the high end for a number of reasons. One, kind of like to your point that, last year 30 plus million people said that they were going to buy a house. Well, only 4 million homes traded hands. So certainly not 30 million people bought homes. Yeah. So it's the same sort of thing. I don't think most of them are actually serious. I think all of us would sit there and go, well, given the right circumstance, I would buy a house or I would sell my house. Well, yeah, if somebody's willing to pay me, $150 on the dollar, I'll sell my home too.
Yeah.
So I don't think that those numbers are particularly accurate. And I think that's going to be reflected in the number of transactions we have this year. I
guarantee you there will be a Crash Bro video where they put these numbers out there and say, the market's going to get flooded with all these people. Here's the bottom line. Every single person who claims they're selling their house to move is a new buyer. That's so right. They're adding another buyer to the buyer pool. It's a zero-sum game. Mm-hmm. It is 100% a zero-sum game. It's not like they're like, yeah, I'm just selling the house, but I'm just going to live in my car or move to Portugal or something, right?
Some people will move to Portugal.
A couple people will move. Here we go. Despite these positive trends, buyers should brace for ongoing competition. Mm-hmm. With limited options, price cuts are rare, and attractive listings are likely to draw intense interest. Mm-hmm. Zillow's data highlights that nearly 30% of homes are selling above their original list price, a significant increase from pre-pandemic years. Juana, none of this in here says there's going to be a housing crash this year. This would be the 5th year in a row, according to the Crash Bros, homes would crash.
Right.
This was the year they said every other year they really meant this year.
Right. Well, Inventory is, while inventory is going to tick up, it's not going to tick up sufficiently to meet demand. So homes that are attractive, homes that are priced well, are going to fare really well, and those sellers will have the opportunity to have their pick of offers, and it'll be good for sellers. Buyers are going to have a better time than they've had as far as interest rates, and maybe a little bit better time than they've had as far as inventory from which to choose. However, they will need to compete against one another.
Here's the first chart we're going to show. Now, so in this spectrum of how long people stay in their houses, there's the middle, which is most of the country. It's like people stay in their house 10, 12 years. I would say the average is 10 to 12 years on average. Okay.
This is nationally.
Nationally. These are national numbers. This is showing the 5 markets where it's the longest. The longest time on average they stay in their homes. So Honolulu, 16 years, but probably because of it's super expensive, and where are you going to go?
Exactly. So I think that's what you're going to see with a lot of these markets is both the intersection of price and mobility, meaning homes are expensive and there's really nowhere to go, insufficient inventory, that sort of thing. So people tend to kind of stay where they are and make it work.
Then the other ones were Buffalo, New York, Springfield, Massachusetts, Scranton, Pennsylvania, with also probably include Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and Pittsburgh.
Right.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 16 to 18 years for all these. I mean, this is just like the Northeast. It's just people don't ever leave.
Right.
Okay. All right. So then, Juana, we're going to now look at the places with the fastest turnover. They spend the less times.
The need for speed?
The need for speed, Vegas. Now, some of this is misleading.
Yes.
Okay. Some of this is because they are places of great migration, a lot of people coming to them. Anytime you have people, large numbers of people moving someplace, why does that create less time in their homes?
So people tend to purchase a starter home in a new place while they kind of get used to the place and figure things out, and then they move on to their forever home or long-term home. The other thing that you're seeing is maybe these places are places where there are younger people. I think that has something to do with it because, again, they tend to be starter homes that people start out in, and then as their life changes and their family grows, they tend to move on to other homes.
It doesn't say specifically because there's a bunch of these Provo, Utah, Vegas, and Cape Coral, Florida are all 7 years. All the rest of these are 8 years. But I'm guessing Vegas is we won. We're first place.
Well, we usually come in first or last, so I think in this case we're probably first.
I think it's, and I will say, because I do get a lot of calls from people. Just got a call the other day from an investor thinking about buying, who was talking about buying maybe a investment property here. But we get a lot of people who come here and they come buy a house. They like literally drive around town, they spend a week, and then they buy a house.
That long, huh?
And then they, after living here 5, 6, 7 years, they go, hey, you know what? I would really like to live in this area for whatever reason. So they go find another area that they like.
Right.
But I also think these cities, as you look at them, we got a Texas and a Florida market, which doesn't surprise me. Colorado Springs, probably one of the fastest growing cities in the country. It's great, super nice. I lived there for 4 years. It was super nice back during my previous career as an airline pilot. Boise, Idaho, city of Boise, right? And then Phoenix, Vegas, Provo. These are like normal markets. This is like where you would expect people to, and these are all growing markets, meaning all of these towns have more people than they had 10 years ago.
Right, which is my point. You've got towns where there's migration, and migration tends to lean to younger people, and younger people tend to have growing families. So you do see that movement. I think that's a good bit of it. I think the other bit is that people who come to town are generally in a position to have to buy existing inventory, meaning resale homes. And then as they kind of get used to the area, maybe they find an area with new homes where they can have a new home built. New homes take a while to build. So that's the other reason why you have maybe a shorter tenure in the initial home. So by the time you kind of hash out all the numbers, that's how it ends up at 7 years. So you've got people who are in there for maybe 2 to 5 years while they're getting used to the area and getting a new home built. And then they sell versus the people who have been there for longer, and they're there longer than 7 years. So those numbers kind of end up meeting at about 7 years.
One of the reasons why I don't really think this is super accurate, and I'll put this chart back up here. So if you look at the trend on this, like I said, I believe this is noise. And some of this is, people don't really know what they want to do. But it looks like the trend is slightly up, like more people have said they're thinking of selling. But if you look at the actual number over the last 3 years of homes that have actually come on the market, it's far less. Mm-hmm. Like less homes have come on the market. This number of the inventory shrinking, less people are selling. So the fact that more people saying they're going to sell, I mean, we need more people to sell just to get back to where we were. And even if we get back to where we were, we need to be more than that because we have this huge pent up demand. Like the article said, 30% of all homes are selling over list price, which is still crazy if you think about it if we had said 2 years ago that with 7% interest rates, 30% of houses would sell above list prices, home prices would be higher today than were in 2022, which they are, they would have made fun of us.
They did.
And said a bunch of the crash bros would have made fun of us and said a whole bunch of stuff. And here we are. Everything we said was 100% right.
Huzzah.
So I still don't think we're going to see like this boom of people selling and causing like a ton of homes on the market. Mm-hmm. Because remember, every time somebody sells, they create a new buyer on the other end. Actually, I think most of the sales we've done, there haven't been a lot of investors. They've been mostly people who are buying just a different market, right? They've all been people, they're moving somewhere else.
Well, they're moving, or a lot of second homes too. So there's a lot of that. Vegas is a big market for second homes, as is Florida. So you do have these markets that have this shorter tenure that are second homes. Phoenix, again, lots of second homes. So there is that to contend with as well.
Right. Anyway, that was it. I saw all the charts.
All right. Well, cool beans. So tell Todd how much you like his charts, because we appreciate some positive feedback. Yep. Remember to leave us your real estate related comments. We appreciate them. Please like the video. Like it. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.